the team of Johnson, Norton, and Smith on the left-hand side, sitting at 8-2. They're going to take on Dilks, Ayers, and Edgar, sitting at 9-1 right now. Strong start to the tournament for that trio of Amulet Masters.
Those are some colorful Goblin shirts.
Beautiful team jerseys over on the side of Johnson, Norton, and Smith.
I like the team solidarity that kind of pops up in these events. This happens a lot in the World Magic Cup, for sure.
Yep.
But also Kane Reinhardt's team were all wearing bandanas yesterday. I asked him about it, and he was like, well, our teammate likes to wear one, and we finally bugged him enough that he got us matching ones.
Okay. That works. I also saw yesterday a team wearing Space Jam jerseys. Someone had Bugs Bunny, someone had Daffy Duck, and someone had Bill Murray's jersey.
That's nice.
Yeah, it was pretty awesome. So the players have started here. You see Norton leading on a Swamp and a Nile Spellbomb. Meanwhile, Ayers with the classic Amulet turn 1 play, going to go ahead and fire off that Ancient Stirrings. Spellbomb not at its best in this matchup, but a great card to have access to in the main deck.
Yeah, and it looks like Norton is well aware of that fact, willing to just cash in the Spellbomb immediately. And Spellbomb is not a card that you would normally see main deck, but it's very low opportunity cost because you see, even in a matchup where it doesn't matter, you just get to cycle it. Now there's an artifact in the graveyard to pump up Tarmogoyf, and granted you exiled sorcery, so maybe it breaks even, but Golgari midrange has plenty of sorceries of its own, and this is a main deck hate card for Arclight Phoenix.
As well as Dredge, another large part of the metagame.
Even if you play against some Snapcaster Mage decks, you get a little extra value. So Nile Spellbomb, very strong against a lot of different strategies.
So again, we're seeing a slower start from the Amulet deck. I think in this matchup, Daryl's just fine with that. There's no reason to rush here. And you see Daryl deploying Azusa, going to go ahead and take advantage of those extra land drops, returning a land to the hand with a bounce land.
Daryl Ayers, the master, leading with his land that does not have a triggered ability, because otherwise if you play that bounce land first with a trigger on the stack, opponent could remove Azusa, and then you miss out on one of your free extra land drops.
Right. That's an extremely important first interaction to understand. You always want to maximize your Azusas where possible. Here we see another Spellbomb fired off. Going to just find a card, and that's going to allow Fatal Push to take out Azusa, but in a lot of ways, damage already done from Azusa. Let's see what the 3-drop here is going to be. Liliana of the Veil, and it's interesting. There's some tension. A lot of times the Amulet Titan plays down to the last few cards in hand, but there's also the bounce lands that can refuel the hand a little bit. So we'll see how effective the plus of Liliana is here.
Liliana is generally a lot stronger when you have a clock to back it up, because it means that you are under this huge time crunch. You have like a Tarmogoyf attacking you, maybe a Dark Confidant drawing cards, and then this Liliana of the Veil that's starting to go ultimate that you also need a separate way to deal with. But Liliana just on its own, I think that Ayers should be able to navigate through this pretty easily.
So Ayers potentially with access to 6 mana this turn. Obviously that's one of the key breakpoints for the deck. But given the amount of thought that's being put forth here, I would assume we're not going to see a Primeval Titan this turn. At least not the easiest of Primeval Titans. You never know when you're going to have to go through some absurd combinations to get there.
Well, the easy Primeval Titan would be to search up a Colony Garden to protect from Liliana of the Veil, but the Colony Garden is in Daryl's hand. And it's just entirely possible that all of his lands ETB tap this turn.
For sure. Certainly something that comes up from time to time with this Amulet deck. There you do see the plant token entering the battlefield, going to provide protection for any Liliana activations. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead and transmute Tolaria West. That's going to find Summoner's Pact. That means the clock is a-ticking. We would expect Primeval Titan next turn unless there's a discard spell in hand for Tony Norton.
Interesting, because this exposes Summoner's Pact to Inquisition of Kozilek, whereas if you hold the Tolaria West in your hand until a turn where you have 9 mana, you can kind of prevent that. But even if Daryl charged the Coalition Relic, he would only have 8 mana next turn unless he also had a land that ETB'd untapped.
Which seems unlikely given how that turn played out.
Yeah, I agree completely. So a little bit of a risk here having to transmute for the Summoner's Pact, but I think Daryl is just doing what he's got to do.
Going to go ahead and plus that Liliana again. Meanwhile, over in the Legacy matchup, Matthew Dilks with Golgari Depths taking down Izzet Delver in the first game. Here we have Summoner's Pact. You know what that's going to get, Jerry.
Hornet Queen.
I mean, Hornet Queen's fine in this matchup, but turns out Primeval Titan just a pinch better.
It's hard to say. I haven't done the math or anything.
The thing about Primeval Titan is it turns into Hornet Queen if you want it to.
Oh, I know.
And that's why it generally will always get the nod. Here's where the tricks start happening. Again, I'll point out, we're seeing Amulet not do the explosive stuff that it's kind of famous for. It could just win the game on turn 2, but we're seeing another controlled, slow game to Amulet, and that's where this deck really unlocks its potential. When you realize you can and are happy to play games like this, then you basically have access to everything that the deck has to offer. A slow game, that explosive turn 2 combo potential, and there you see Daryl Ayers going ahead and getting a bounce land to replay the Colony Garden and put a second plant token into play, because that's what's important right now.
So Norton noticeably did not attack with any of his creature lands last turn. He discarded a Fatal Push. He used a Fatal Push. I believe Daryl recognizes that Tony will likely have the combination of removal spell for the plant plus a minus on the Liliana to kill the Primeval Titan, so he's playing around that a little bit, which I like a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a really nice read from Daryl Ayers. And there you see instead Assassin's Trophy going to take out the Primeval Titan directly. It's going to allow Ayers to go ahead and get a basic. You see Forest.
And this is good. I mean, obviously Ayers has plenty of mana available to him already, but he has a Summoner's Pact he has to pay for next turn. There's a Teleria West that is just chilling on the battlefield. Presumably he has a way to return to his hand like a bounce land. So he's got plenty to do with his mana in the next few turns, I'm sure.
Yeah, lots to spend it on. Not sure how many cards are in hand for Ayers, but there is going to be a plus of that Liliana. Looks like there's 2 cards in hand presently. Going to discard a bounce land. I would wager that last card is a bounce land as well, but we'll see what happens here as Ayers goes ahead. Untap's going to add a counter to that Coalition Relic. As you mentioned, plenty of mana on this turn.
And Norton, again, discarding a Kalitas, not attacking with his creature lands, keeping his mana open for something. This could just be to protect Liliana of the Veil from a combination of like Amulet of Vigor plus Primeval Titan, give it haste, and actually threaten the Liliana.
Yeah, if nothing else, it'll slow Ayers down a little bit. I mean, granted, to do explosive things like that, hasty attacks with the Primeval Titan, you do need the Amulet in play. And Norton knows he's safe from that, at least going into the last turn. So it would have had to be top decked here.
Right, of course. But it is important when you're in these situations where you think this Liliana is about to go ultimate, is it worth like just trying to chip your opponent for 3 damage? I mean, it seems like Norton is very confident that that is not how he's winning this game, is getting aggressive with Treetop Village.
I want to point out, too, Norton's deck, 4 copies of Assassin's Trophy, the full 4. So able to answer Primeval Titan 1-for-1 with that card. Very powerful angle of play to have access to in this deck.
Absolutely.
What do you think about 4 Assassin's Trophy out of these Golgari lists?
I mean, it's a lot. It is. You want to play some amount because you need ways to kill Tron lands or kill Karn Liberated, kill these giant threats that all these decks are presenting. Like Primeval Titan's another big one that stuff like Abrupt Decay just can't touch.
Right.
And you already have that problem and with Fatal Push, so it becomes just like further exacerbated when you start playing a lot of removal just for small stuff.
There you see the Amulet, and there you see Summoner's Pack. He top decked one of them. Found one of the cards.
So I'm guessing the card in Norton's hand is a trophy. I mean, obviously trophy has a downside, and it's a big downside. If you have to kill a turn 2 creature, like they play a Champion of the Parish that just gets out of control or whatever, and that's your only removal spell, it is very punishing to give your opponent an extra land.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just a necessary evil at this point.
I'm really curious as to what Daryl's going to get out of the deck here. I'm assuming it's going to be Slayer's Stronghold plus Boros Garrison. What's he going to do with the 2 cards, though?
I mean, Garrison is going to pick up the Teleria West. I know that for a fact.
I agree.
And then it is possible that you can't really pump a plant, right? Because he has just the creature lands to block.
He's pointing to a plant here.
And reconsidering his life real quick.
Yeah, I think the same thing dawned on him that you mentioned and is now dawning on me. I didn't think of. Just activate that Treetop Village and throw it in front of the plant. And that completely blunts that play. Oh, yeah. He's got Ghost Quarter untapped, though.
True.
So that makes that plan a little bit more viable.
Yeah. No, that's good. That's smart.
I think that's definitely what Ayers is playing towards here. And that's why the Ghost Quarter was left untapped. Let's see, though.
And that means that you can send the plant at Liliana. That threatens whatever removal spell that Norton would have to use. He would have to use it on the plant to protect the Liliana. That protects your Primeval Titan.
You could also just send both plants and then hit the unblocked one as well.
Yeah, no, that's a good plan too. And then maybe you don't have to use your Ghost Quarter.
Right. And that is what we're going to see here out of Ayers. I would anticipate if Ayers is now reaching, no blocks has been called, but let's see what happens.
For today's 11:13 Modern Challenge. If you would like to play today's 11:13 Modern
2 mana is tapped on the part of Norton. Edgar took game 1 against Dimir Control with Esper Control. Interesting matchup there, not one we see a lot in Standard.
Yeah, for sure. I'm curious if the Dimir deck is creature-centric, like main deck Thief of Sanities, because that's always a tough card to deal with. Disinformation Campaign is another strong one.
We're hearing from production that it is a creature-heavy build. Hostage Taker, Thief of Sanity, Doom Whisperers, and Disinformation Campaign.
Yeah, that seems like a tough matchup overall.
Yeah, I think so. So we saw the Treetop activation. We saw the Ghost Quarter. Here's Slayer's Stronghold targeting one of those plants. And I really like this approach for Ayers, because if you head into the next turn with Primeval Titan, you're probably in pretty good shape regardless of what goes on this turn.
Yeah, the only thing that would have to happen is that the Liliana Ultimate gives you a choice of, are you able to pay for Summoner's Pact, or do you keep your Primeval Titan around?
Okay.
You know?
Yeah, that's a fine line to take. So the attack was successful from the plant token, able to bring Liliana down to 4. And there was an Assassin's Trophy in hand. Interesting.
So Norton now deciding that Liliana Ultimate is not enough.
I think your point is very interesting, where you split between paying for Pact and having a Primeval Titan. You have to take paying for Pact. I don't know.
But it's effectively the same thing, where Primeval Titan is now gone, and Daryl can pay for Pact, but Norton still has the Liliana around. I mean, you could have done like more creative piles with, like, you could put the Titan with the Slayer Stronghold, and then Daryl wouldn't have access to that. But
yeah, I think he would have had access to fewer lands going into this turn, too, under that setup, which now he has Teleria West. He's able to generate another Primeval Titan.
Well, he still needs a bounce land, because he was forced to pick up the Forest with bounce land because Liliana could plus to make him discard it, so he didn't want to pick up the Teleria. So.
Yep, okay. Well, let's see what Ayers found here. Looks like just the Cavern of Souls. Okay.
Do we name Dinosaur here to spook him?
Why not? Never know when that Sakama's coming. Hopefully never, but. So it looks like a minus here.
Got to clear out those plants, protect Liliana.
Yeah, makes sense. Cavern of Souls on Giant, unfortunately.
Disappointing.
Yeah, I would have gone Dinosaur.
Did you know that yesterday Tom Ross played 1 Glacial Fortress in his standard white aggro deck?
Just to bluff the negates.
Yeah, Tom played 1 Marsh Flats in his 8-rack deck, and the quote was, to spook him.
Okay, love it from the boss. Ayers actually Coalition Relic flooded here, not something we see quite often.
Yeah, and Norton finally finds a threat, so he's done a good job of containing Ayers and keeping all the threats off the table. Had to deal with some rampaging plant tokens, was able to do that so far, and found a threat of his own in Tarmogoyf, which, as we all know, is a very fast clock.
I will say this, Ayers is at the point where about, I would say 40% of his deck probably just wins him the game on the spot and needs to fade a couple more draw steps.
I mean, 40% is a lot, but 60% is more.
That's true.
And he's probably got 4 turns. Maybe less than that, too, because of the Liliana.
Yeah, there's also redraws as well for the Golgari deck, right? Like, they can find other options.
Yeah, if Norton draws another Tarmogoyf this turn, that's 1 less turn off the clock, but we're adding some mana here.
Yeah, it looks like about 1 million of it. Walking Ballista, I think, is the play.
Oh, my.
Yep, that's a big Walking Ballista, and it's going to be hasty, too. Let's see how many dice are going to go. Nope, we're looking at 10. 10-10 Walking Ballista. It's going to go to 12-10 with haste and vigilance. That's a lethal attacker.
That is one of the live top decks.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Pretty good. I think there's a Hissing Quagmire, but that's not enough to stem the tide, right? We're still getting in for 10 damage. You just pull off the rest of the counters, and that would, in fact, be lethal. And Tony's like, yeah, you got me. Like I said, a large portion of the deck very, very live once you hit that state with Amulet Titan. You generate enough mana, you're just looking to top deck basically anything. You get redraws with Ancient Stirrings, your Teleria West all turn into something. You have just Primeval Titan. Hornet Queen would be great.
Daryl had a Teleria West on the battlefield, too. So
any bounce land.
Yes.
Yeah, so just an incredible amount of live draws there for Daryl. And he hits one in the form of Walking Ballista, probably the largest Walking Ballista I've seen this weekend thus far. All the members of Dilks, Ayers, and Edgar up a game right now. Fine start for them.
This is the Amulet Cabal, but as it turns out, they are good at Magic. They can play other decks.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Look, these are very, very talented Magic players, very comfortable in a wide variety of matchups. Why don't we go ahead and start on Tony Norton's side with the sideboards here. You see 4 Fulminator Mage. Those are certainly rushing into the game. 2 Grafdigger's Cage, 1 Damping Sphere, 1 Nissa, 1 Liliana the Last Hope, 1 Collective Brutality, 1 Languish, 1 Surgical Extraction, 1 Nile Spellbomb, 1 Kitchen Finks, 1 Engineered Explosives. Jerry, what besides those Fulminator Mages are coming in here?
Definitely the Damping Sphere.
Of course.
And I think the Liliana the Last Hope, it picks off Sacro Tribe Scouts. Maybe the plant tokens also is able to recur the Fulminator Mages. Things like Collective Brutality a little weak. Nile Spellbomb we saw basically just cycling. So not a ton of help here, but the 6 cards I think that are definitely coming in are very impactful ones.
I agree with you. Meanwhile, over on Daryl's side, we are looking at 1 Engineered Explosive, 1 Chameleon Colossus, 1 Tragic Arrogance, 1 Tireless Tracker, 1 Ramunap Excavator, 2 Primal Command, 3 Negate, 4 Path to Exile, and 1 Reclamation Sage. I'll go ahead and take this one. I love Chameleon Colossus here. It certainly is a scary, scary threat. Tireless Tracker playing a more attrition-based game. Very happy to be in this slower matchup. I would say the same about Ramunap Excavator. I don't know if Daryl necessarily feels that way. I often bring in Ramunap Excavator in these type of matchups. Don't think we're looking for Primal Command type stuff here. Negate seems kind of meh. I doubt we're doing Path to Exile. Just our A plan is better than trying to answer their plan. I do expect the Reclamation Sage to come in just because you want to have access to it via Summoner's Pact. You do expect Damping Sphere from a deck like Golgari midrange.
And you kind of have to hedge around it, right? Because it's fairly low opportunity cost to put a Reclamation Sage in your deck post-board. I mean, obviously it's not ideal if your opponent has no targets, but you can play the game, kind of suss them out, see if they draw a Damping Sphere, see how aggressively they mulligan to any potential sideboard cards, and see kind of what they're leaning on.
Interesting, we're starting to see more and more double white options in the sideboard of these Amulet decks. We saw Consulate Crackdown start to show up as an answer for the War Prison decks. Here you see a Tragic Arrogance as the new one of in the sideboard here. I'm assuming we're targeting like humans with that. I don't know what other matchups they're really looking to bring it in. I'll have to talk with the Cabal when I get a moment today, and I'll have some more information next time they're sitting down here.
The Arrogance is also good against Whir, right? And it gets around Welding Jar.
Yeah, you can certainly use it against Whir. I think that's a very good point. Kind of doing 2 jobs in one, taking the role of that Consulate Crackdown. So if you are anxious to put your Amulet skills to the test, you want to figure out your own sideboard plans in this matchup, why not head over to SCG Game Night every week in March, giving out that beautiful Veni Vidi Armadici token. There you see the little armadillo Sand Warrior ready to spring into action. There's going to be tokens. There's going to be sleeves. Head over to go.starcitygames.com/game night for more information.
What I want to know is, why are the Primal Commands there if not for a matchup like this?
So I'm not sold on the Primal Commands. I don't know exactly what they're looking to do with them. I guess like seems fine-ish in mirrors. Maybe you want to lean on the life gain against the burn decks. But I'm going to have to check in with the Cabal and see exactly what they're purposing this for. We'll see. Maybe it will show up in this matchup.
I mean, it's another card that can put Ensnaring Bridge on top of a library or something. So it is certainly multi-purpose, right? Because you can fight Dredge with it, which is not ideal, but is another place that you could bring it in against Burn, like you mentioned. But it's just a quick 2-for-1 in a matchup like this that I feel like is fairly grindy.
Yeah, we even saw some copies start to creep their way into the main deck over the last couple of weeks. So certainly people very high on Primal Command. We'll see if it's tailor-made for a matchup like this.
I don't know about main deck. Seems like a bit much for me, but...
Well, one of the things about these modal spells like Command is that you can almost always find something to do with it, right? At worst, it's another copy of Primeval Titan. You can usually live with that, but you feel like there's probably something a little cleaner you could be doing main. Meanwhile, over in the Legacy matchup, Chris Johnson taking a game off Matthew Dilks. That's going to be tied at 1 game apiece. Uh-oh. Some trouble on the Golgari mid-range side.
Tony Norton on a mulligan, I believe just a 6, but kept a 1-lander, likely hand pretty strong with some sideboard cards. Scryed, bricked on a land, and this one could be over, but we've seen Daryl Ayers have a propensity to play these games with a little bit of a slower draw. You know, he's not trying to all-out combo someone. He knows that he can play a longer game, especially against something like Golgari midrange.
Yeah, I think that's very smart in this matchup. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Norton's hand has something like a Damping Sphere, a very high-impact card in it. We'll have to see as the game goes on if that's the case. Ayers, again, doing nothing explosive, but you see one of the critical new adds for these Amulet decks in that Coalition Relic, and precisely for that interaction, being able to find your accelerant with Ancient Stirrings, Ayers now set up for that turn 4 Primeval Titan.
And it's got to be scary. This is prompting some action from Norton, so I may have seen him with the Thoughtseize or Inquisition. He's just like, I have to fire it off now. But
no, we found the second land. It's just going to be Dark Confidant here, so not quite as explosive as something like Damping Sphere. Coalition Relic going to be activated to get the counter on it. That means it's going to remove that counter in the main phase. Is there another land for access to 6 mana?
We saw Dark Confidant not be enough in the Legacy matchup last round, and might be seeing more of the same here. Like turn 2, Dark Confidant is okay, but anytime after that, it's a little too slow.
Not a huge turn there for Ayers, just a Walking Ballista. Does answer the Dark Confidant, but that was the turn where Ayers really wanted to cement the game, put it away, play Primeval Titan. No 6th mana source.
Feel like he's just waiting on a land. And having a 3-lander with Ancient Stirrings, Coalition Relic is basically the best possible card you could find. So again, I agree with you. That's a very valuable addition because it would have just completely salvaged Ayers' slow, kind of awkward draw.
Yeah, I want to point something out. I think it's unlikely, given how Ayers played that turn, that he has access to Primeval Titan right now. Just because
of the Gemstone Mine?
Yeah, and he used the Coalition Relic. You would just use the Gemstone Mine instead and be able to re-up the charge counter on the Coalition Relic if you were looking to just top deck a land in this turn and play Primeval Titan.
Okay, I could see that. It's also possible that if you go use Gemstone Mine this turn and you play Primeval Titan next turn, you lose the Gemstone Mine, and that's kind of a feel bad, but it happens sometimes.
Yeah, if you're playing Primeval Titan, you're generally okay with that. Like,
right.
You'll let your land go away. So not wanting to face that fate points to not having Primeval Titan to me. Of course, could just be willing to play this game slowly, as we discussed. So
Daryl says, I would rather lose the game than sacrifice my Gemstone Mine. I refuse.
Right. Huge fan of Gemstone Mine. Meanwhile, over in our standard matchup, tied up at a game apiece. Looks like we're in for a tight match here.
That was a pretty quick one, too.
Yeah. Well, Dimir Control sounds like they have just access to more cards that can get onto the battlefield immediately. Something like Disinformation Campaign, if you have the right draw, can just close your opponent out of the game immediately.
Right.
Here's a Fatal Push for that Walking Ballista. Interesting use of Fatal Push here. Path to Exile on my own Walking Ballista, says Daryl.
Kind of ballsy, too, because Norton used the Twilight Mire, so he had a mana floating.
Right. Very true. And this time, notice that the Coalition Relic was not used. That points to me thinking Daryl wants to have access to 6 mana on this next turn. Here is Engineered Explosives on 0. Interesting.
That is a way to kill Amulet of Vigor, so maybe I undervalued that in sideboarding.
Okay.
And this could be Norton keeping up Assassin's Trophy, but also wanting to deploy this explosives because he has 8 cards in hands.
Yeah, possible he would have had to discard to hand size and willing to just put that on the battlefield. It'll take out any plant tokens that happen to show up, so
right,
that's worth something.
And that's kind of a combo with Liliana.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe he just has Liliana in hand, right? And this allows him to destroy the plant token at end of turn, untap, and then play Liliana, clear out the Titan.
Very possible. Here you see Primeval Titan. Let's see what Ayers wants to do with the search. Certainly capable of making 2 plant tokens if he chooses. Let's keep that in mind.
Yeah, has not played a land yet this turn, but explosives will clear them both out.
Right. Very true.
Yeah, there's no way Norton would have had a discard because he played a spell last turn.
Okay. So here is the first of those plant tokens. Going to go ahead and enter the battlefield. Let's see if we're just going to go ahead and pop that engineered explosives at end of turn. Here comes the Colony Garden back to hand, going to be redeployed. Second plant token. Yeah, there goes engineered explosives. Let's see if we can top deck third land for Liliana. There's the third land. There is Liliana. Beautifully read, Jerry. You set that up perfectly. And able to deal with the first Primeval Titan. And note, making double plants there. Didn't have Talaria West come down. Didn't provide additional copies of Primeval Titan. Of course, we don't know Daryl's hand. He could just have all Primeval Titans. Who knows? Here's a surgical extraction on Primeval Titan. So it doesn't matter if he has Primeval Titans. Oh, do you see what's in hand, though?
The Colossus.
Chameleon, Colossus, and Hornet Queen.
We got backup.
Yeah. Daryl says, okay, I was done with that Primeval Titan anyway. I think I have the cards I need.
And the Primal Command I see in the library, too.
Mm-hmm. So it did make the cut here. Interesting, you can play more of like a toolboxy type game, right? Like you just let the game go long, you Primal Command for whatever you need in the spot, be it Chameleon Colossus to just end the game very quickly, Hornet Queen to provide some defense. You're basically transforming into a more mid-ranges type deck. It wouldn't surprise me if there's no amulets in the deck, by the way, at this stage.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I know historically that's been the plan against these mid-range type matchups is you just cut all of the amulets.
Man, from playing the Jund side of this matchup earlier, maybe 3 years ago or something, I would absolutely love that if they did that.
If they cut the amulets?
Yeah, because it puts so much pressure on you to actually react with them in the correct ways in the early game.
Yeah, I think Amulet just feels they are better equipped to play the long game now than these Jund decks are, which is an interesting read. And a lot of it is you get into these kind of top deck situations where it's like the classic boarding out your thought seizes in a Jund mirror where like you don't want to draw them in the later turns because it's about who pulls the last spell off the top of the deck. It's a lot of the same thinking there when you're cutting things like the Amulet of Vigor.
Yeah, I think that whole board out Thoughtseize thing is kind of overstated to some
Never
degree,
worked
too.
for you? I thought it was very overstated in the mono black mirrors. Like people were very into cutting it there, and I was like, no, this might just be a key card.
That seems crazy because you were always trying to set up pack rat or underworld connections and nothing else mattered.
Right.
But for modern Jund or Golgari, like that sort of thing still matters too because you don't necessarily have answers for everything. So it's like, oh, if I could use a discard spell, that means I can protect my Liliana the Veil, and like that's a lot bigger of a determinative factor on who wins than whether or not you draw a Thoughtseize on turn 10 or whatever.
Right. So here you see Hornet Queen entering the battlefield. Extremely, extremely problematic card for the Golgari deck to answer, wishing that Engineered Explosives was still around these days.
We saw Hornet Queen be the scourge of Standard against like Abzan mid-range, Siege Rhino, just any sort of green mid-range deck has trouble dealing with Hornet Queen, and that remains true in Modern, oddly enough.
Valuable card to have access to in this Amulet deck. I routinely see people talking themselves into cutting it. I think they're always wrong. I think it just closes so many strategic holes you otherwise have and answers so many otherwise unanswerable problems that it's worth the opportunity cost to include it in your deck. Here you see Engineered Explosives on 3, ready to clean up both Tireless Tracker and Liliana. Pretty nice name for that Engineered Explosives.
Yeah, not bad. I mean, Norton knew this was coming, and you see him already kind of resigned to his fate. Like,
what else can I do?
What out can he possibly have to all of these insects? You know, like each one individually will deal with the Tarmogoyf in addition to just pressuring.
Absolutely.
And there is effectively no clean answer.
There goes the Engineered Explosive. You see Ayers not going to deploy the Chameleon Colossus that we know to be in hand.
Figuring he can maybe only lose to something like a Languish or Damnation?
I think so. I think it makes sense to just be a little extra safe there. Dealing with a 2-turn clock right now from these Flying Hornets, ready to close the game pretty quickly. There they go. 6 more damage heading Norton's way. Going to fall to 4. See if Ayers wants to do anything else on this turn. It's going to be a bounce land. Going to return the Colony Garden. Just in case has need of a future plant. Here's the draw from Norton. Is he able to find an answer to a bunch of Hornets? I don't know how many there are in the deck at this point, quite frankly.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised that the Explosives came in, but obviously it would look great here.
Yep. Kind of. Still facing a 2-turn clock at the end of the day, so.
Well,
only buys a turn.
it would look great in that it would actually affect the board to some degree.
Right.
It doesn't win you the game, though.
Here's an Inquisition of Kozilek that's going to grab either an Engineered Explosives or a Summoner's Pact. Wonder what's left in the deck to summon at this point.
Excavator.
Yeah, maybe.
Tireless Tracker.
Maybe.
You got some hits.
Assuming Ayers agrees with my assessment, who knows what his creature base looks like.
It was in there.
What are we looking at here? Collective Brutality, killing the Hornet Queen and gaining 2 life, so that is going to extend the game by a turn. Norton going to go ahead and move up to 6, plays last land from hand, gets in there with Tireless Tracker, which is also going to put a clue onto the battlefield, and passes the turn back to Ayers. If Ayers can find a red source here,
Right.
can win the game.
He's got the Slayer Stronghold still chilling. He did not expect to lose his Coalition Relic to the Engineered Explosives. I don't think it was a big deal, and it's still a play that you definitely make. But
is he going to get a red source off Ramunap Excavator from the graveyard? I'm not sure exactly what's in the graveyard right now, so it's
Gemstone
possible.
Mine, the Gemstone Mine that he lost earlier.
There you go. There's the Gemstone Mine. Going to go ahead and activate Slayer's Stronghold. And that is going to do it from Daryl Ayers. I love lines like that. That's one of the reasons I love Ramunap Excavator so much in this deck. It opens up a lot of play patterns. It's also great at dealing with the Tron matchup, just looping your Ghost Quarters repeatedly. But we have more Magic for you. We're not done with this matchup yet. As you see, all these other matches still tied at a game of Police. We're going to hop over to the Legacy matchup, see how that goes. We'll figure out exactly where we're at there.
If you have not found your seat,
You see Matthew Dilks with head in hand, thinking very carefully. Looks like we have 2 Hex Mages and a Sylvan Safekeeper on the battlefield. Thespian Stage, Urborg in play, so all the lands produce black. Bunch of islands, a Delver, and a Volcanic Island on the side of Chris Johnson and the Izzet Delver deck. Here you see Dilks going to go ahead and fire off a Thoughtseize. We'll make sure we get these life totals right.
So Pithing Needle almost certainly on something like Wasteland. And 2 Vampire Hex Mages at Thespian Stage ready to go, making a 2020 whenever possible.
Golgari Depth's another deck which has evolved a lot recently. It's starting to add Mox Diamond as a new mana source. It used to be based a lot around things like Elvish Spirit Guide, Lotus Petal. Now looking to some more permanent sources of mana these days.
Yeah, and I kind of like that inclusion. Like we mentioned last round when we were covering Legacy, you need to add additional mana sources to your deck in order to pay for the cost on Mox Diamond, but that's okay in this deck because you're already playing a bunch of lands that effectively do nothing. You have backup copies of legendary lands like Dark Depths and Urborg, and you do end up playing these longer games in a lot of matchups.
Yeah, 27 lands here from Dilks, so certainly equipped to pay the Mox Diamond tax. There are 4 Mox Diamonds here, as well as 4 Crop Rotation. Man, do I love Crop Rotation. One of my favorite cards of all time.
I feel like Crop Rotation is one of the cards that I just never use correctly.
It's a challenging card. It's a toolbox. You can protect yourself from Wasteland, kind of. There's all kinds of nifty tricks, again, you can get up to with Crop Rotation that the best players will often find, much like Flicker Wisp, one of those unassuming cards that can actually do so much. I've seen some Elves players start to include a copy of Crop Rotation in their deck just to have access to things like Pendlehaven and key spots or additional cradles. So a very versatile card, one that maybe is a little bit underplayed in Legacy, quite frankly, for as powerful as it is.
Yeah, it's entirely possible. I think the main drawback is like, I don't want to get this Spell Pierced or Dazed or whatever.
Right.
And certainly that is a huge cost, but in the case of Golgari Depths, Crop Rotation is normally setting up a kill. Mm-hmm. So I think that cost is worth it.
Able to get something like Sagiri Step to protect the Jerry Thompson token that will hopefully be rampaging through the battlefield. Also things like Bajuka Bog, Answering Graveyards, plenty of versatile options in the sideboard. Occasionally you see something like a Tabernacle in the sideboard, other one-of bullets to possibly go to. No Tabernacle here from Dilks today.
Dilks has a Caracas, though, which is another good one.
That's a fine one, yeah.
I would definitely recommend, again, not going too deep on your tutor packages.
One of the things I really liked, I used to play a lot of Depths. I would often have a copy of Ancient Tomb in my sideboard and set up Chalice plays in post-board games for the combo matchups, which can be problematic for this deck. You're a little bit slowed to take down something like Tendrils. So I always appreciated having access to that card. And it would set up like Thorn of Resistance, or is it Sphere of Resistance?
Sphere of Resistance, Thorn of Amethyst.
Thank you. Yeah, you can play those cards on turn 1 and really give Storm a difficult time.
My first invitational back after working at Wizards, I believe I talked Jody Keith into adding an Ancient Tomb to his sideboard for when he brought in the spheres, and then it just made your crop rotations a mana accelerator.
Yeah.
At first, he was kind of hesitant, but then it just became stock. Like, everyone, Jody did well, everyone copied his deck list, everyone started playing an Ancient Tomb in their sideboards, and I don't remember if I talked to you about that or not.
I don't think so. My experience with this deck is much more recent, I will say.
Okay.
And I feel like I just basically stole it from Lands, who was also doing the same thing.
Yeah.
To answer the combo matchups.
I think that came from me.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Glad it made its way around to me eventually. So talk to me a little bit about what's going on right here. It seems like both players kind of settling into anemic beatdown plans. Sounds like Thespian Stage is currently copying a Forest. Interesting use for the Thespian Stage.
If you have the open mana, using Stage to copy something is completely reasonable. Especially a basic land. I think that's fine.
So Dilks just beating down here and quite possibly going to steal this game with the Vampire Hexmage beatdown.
You say steal, but this is a legit game plan. Legacy decks have a fail rate, and when decks like Delver load up on things like Surgical Extraction, Spell Pierce, all these ways to ensure that they don't die to a combo, well, you have all of these mopey creatures in your deck that you can actually just beat people down with. And
right.
Golgari Depths does a very, very good job of this, and you saw players before go from like only Hex Mages as creatures to then playing things like maybe Deathrite Shaman when that was legal,
yep.
Dark Confidant, and they had a more solid B plan as their backup. And this just happens in a lot of games. And
it's crazy too because you're seeing Johnson with a full grip. You'd think there'd be something he could muster. There was 5 cards in hand going into this turn. Generally, 5 cards in Legacy is like a billion. He should have all the options in the world playing a blue deck, but I think they're just a bunch of reactive spells. I see like Spell Pierce. I think I saw a Force of Will possibly.
Yeah, and Izzet Delver doesn't play defense very well. And
right.
Dilks is in a spot where he can just attack with 3 creatures. There's not a whole lot Izzet Delver can do because of the Sylvan Safekeeper.
Here's another Pithing Needle, going to name Terramander, prevent that from going big. And we're just going to see everyone go ahead and swing in here. And that's going to do it. Get the handshake from Chris Johnson. Matthew Dilks takes down Izzet Delver with Golgari Depths and some Vampire Hexmage beatdowns.